Welcome one and all for this webinar on ASP .NET MVC 5. Just take a look at something about myself. My name is Lohit Jian. If you have been a regular to this webinars, you will know who I am. But for those of you who are kind of first timers, I'm a technical evangelist with Telric. That's how I look. That's my picture. I'm a Microsoft MVP in the area of ASP.NET and IAS. I also am a member of Bangalore .NET user group, one of the India's biggest user groups and the most active user group. I'm an author. I authored a book last year. So this is my Twitter handle. If you want to get hold of me, just tweet it to me. I'll answer you back. Those are my websites. We also have telrichelper.net where I keep writing, and also www.telric.com. You should bookmark pretty much these all websites if you want to get a technology dose every day. Today's agenda, it's basically six things that is there in ASP.NET MVC 5. So I'm going to be pretty much looking at that. First, we start out with something known as one ASP.NET. Second, we're going to be looking at Bootstrap. Third, ASP.NET Identity. So there's a new identity system that was, developed by Microsoft, which is super cool. And then it uses entity framework, data context. So now it's pretty much like, you can have any backend store, and then your entity can work with, seamlessly with those databases. Next, we're going to be looking at my favorite, known as scaffolding. If you're new to scaffolding, I'm going to show you, without writing a code, I will be able to create a CRUD pages. It solves, it saves, if you have to estimate how much does it time to take to create a CRUD screen, I would say it's a couple of minutes, and with MVC, of course, with the Visual Studio 2013 and all those things. Then we're going to be looking at another cool feature that I like is known as attribute routing. Of course, MVC is all about routing, right? You just say home/index. So what is it? It's a home controller and then an index action method. So how does it happen? Yeah, that's the routes, route collection, route table. That's how MVC plugs in and then plumps it out, and then says, okay, here is your controller and action method. When you just say localhost :port/home/index. So that's all the routing thing. Well, scaffolding is basically nothing but you, without writing any line of code, the Visual Studio tooling, what it will do is it will create screens for create, read, update, delete, in one shot. And it just gives you a head start. Let's assume you have tens of entities, or let's say I have a person, I have a customer, I have something like that, domain models, and then for each of these domain models I need a CRUD screen. So would you handcraft it? It's going to take you days. Instead, if you use ASP Visual Studio 2013 scaffolding feature, right click and say, hey, I want to scaffold, my model is person, I want to CRUD screens, I want to use this particular entity framework, data context, boom, within a minute, within seconds, depending on your machine, because I am on an i7 with a 8 GB RAM, so it takes hardly a couple of seconds for me to get those screens up and running. So that's what scaffolding is all about. So we're going to be looking at that. Attribute routing, it's another cool feature that I like. And then we'll also look at new authentication filters. These are some of the interesting things that I see in ASP.NET MVC 5 that everybody should be aware of. So let's dive in now. Okay, so what is ASP.NET MVC 5, right? Everybody would have this particular question in their mind. Everybody is working on MVC. Everybody knows what ASP.NET MVC is, but if somebody comes and says, hey, what's ASP.NET MVC 5? So what do you say, right? So that was even what I had. So this is what Microsoft has to say. ASP.NET MVC 5 is a framework for building scalable, standards-based web applications using well-established design patterns and also the power of ASP.NET and the .NET framework. And of course, MVC 5 can work side by side, or can run side by side with MVC 4. It's up to you how you want to handle it. Like, not many people would be ready to move to a new platform just because, or new runtime just because it came out. There are many dependencies, so you need to make sure you check it. But the good thing is you may be in MVC 4 and MVC5 can be installed, and then you can start your new applications with MVC5, because MVC4 and MVC5, they run parallel, they run together, they can be running side by side. So we call it a side by side execution, right? So so you can just pretty much copy and then tell somebody that, hey, what's an MVC5? Yeah, it's a framework for building scalable standards-based web application with patterns, with the power of ASP.NET, with the power of .NET framework, right? So next question may be, how do I get ASP.NET MVC5, right? So it comes default out of the box with Visual Studio 2013, right? So we had Visual Studio 2013 launched last November timeframe, and then well, many of you, if you don't know, we had Mr. Somasegar, who is the VP of the developer tools. You know, he was here in Bangalore, and then we had the Visual Studio launch here in Bangalore. It was pretty cool to meet him, you know, greet him. So so you get ASP.NET MVC5 when you install Visual Studio 2013, and of course it is targeted for runtime 4.5. So meaning you want to program against MVC5, you would need to have 2013, which MVC5 comes out of the box. Let's assume you are on Visual Studio 2012. So can I work with MVC5? Yes, you can, but you would have to go to Microsoft.com and then figure out a executable which is required to make sure that your Visual Studio 2012 understands MVC5, understands .NET 4.5, and then you will be able to actually target you know, ASP.NET MVC5 with your Visual Studio 2012. If you have Visual Studio 2013, you do not need to do anything because it comes with 4.5, .NET Runtime 4.5, and then it comes with ASP.NET MVC5, right? I hope now it's clear as to, if somebody asks what's MVC5, and then if somebody asks how do I get MVC5, I hope you know, I kind of explained you those two aspects. Now let's dive into demos. You know, I think I have only one line slides like this from now onwards. You know, so now we're going to be looking at one ASP.NET, and then there you go, demo. So let me bring up my Visual Studio 2013. As you can see, I'm using Ultimate 2013, but it doesn't matter. You can be on Visual Studio Express Visual Studio 2013 Express for web. You know, that's the free version of Visual Studio, and everybody tells me like, oh, I cannot work with that. I would say that is all you need in order to, you know, do whatever you want with web applications, because the only difference that I've seen with Visual Studio Express editions with the Ultimate SKUs or professional developer SKUs is a couple of things. Not all extensions that you have are supported on Visual Studio Express editions, and then another major difference is you cannot put more than one breakpoint in Visual Studio Express, but who cares, right? You know, you always put only one breakpoint. And of course the extensions, yeah, you cannot do anything there. Some of the extensions or packages are not supported for Express SKUs. That's fine, but whatever I'm going to be showing today can be done completely on Visual Studio Express for 2013. You know, no, I'm just using Ultimate because I have it. So, but otherwise, you guys can be on Express. This video is recorded, so come back again, install a Visual Studio Express. Have the video on the right hand monitor, or some, if you have an external monitor, have your Visual Studio Express open, and then you can follow along. You know, there's no changes. So now when you first come, and then I talked about one ASP.NET, right? So you must be confused about, okay, what is this? You know, we always had ASP.NET, so why is it called one ASP.NET, right? Let me kind of tell you why it's known as one ASP.NET now. Now, when you open up, you know, Visual Studio and you say File, New Project, what happens is, let me just show you a. Just give me a second. My mouse seems to have kind of not responding. There you go. I'm back. So let's assume I'm not. I don't have Visual Studio 2013. Let's assume that you have opened Visual Studio 2012. Okay, just for a second, just assume that there's no Visual Studio 2013, but this is a Visual Studio 2012. So if you are on your systems now and then you have Visual Studio 2012, just go and then say File, New Project. That's it. Don't do anything else. Just File, New Project. And what you will see is, you know, we had this many choices in order to just create a web application. Empty web, web forms, MVC4, dynamic data, Ajax server control, Ajax control extender, Ajax, you know, I want to create a web application which is based on ASP.NET. That's as simple as it can get. But what Microsoft used to give me was a bunch of options right in the front end. I used to start scratching my head saying like, Should it be forms? Should it be MVC? Can't I add MVC later? Can't I add web forms later? Well, a lot of confusion, but you couldn't do that. Like, if you had in previous, like in Visual Studio 2012, if you go ahead and then create a project and say it is web forms, you couldn't add MVC flavor or MVC, things in future. You are locked down to web forms only. If you had created MVC4 and then you wanted to, let's say, quickly do something, and then I want to bring in web forms. Let me tell you this. Web forms is a more mature technology. It's been there from last 10 years. I started out web forms way back in 2002 when it was .NET 1.1. But it's one of the mature and then one of the fastest way you can develop. Of course, there are certain things like view state, control state, and all those things. But if you can, architect it well, it is one of the fastest way to create a UI, right? So maybe I'm doing a MVC application for front end, but I want web forms for my back end, just for the admin kind of things. But you couldn't do that in 2012 and below, right? So that is why I said, when you now go and then in Visual Studio 2013, when you go and then say File New Project Web, you get only one choice. Don't worry about this Nancy. The Nancy is another framework which is pretty similar to MVC and Durandal. So I was playing around and then it's there. But let's say you just install Visual Studio 2013, you will see only one option. That is the option that I have highlighted now, which is known as plainly ASP.NET Web Application. Nothing else, nothing more. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say one ASP NET demo and I'm going to say OK. Oh, there's a new dialog now, right? So what is happening is basically when I selected, I said, hey, I just want to create an ASP.NET web application, which is good. That's correct. That's what the starting point is all about. Now, Microsoft, like the Visual Studio wants to say, hey, I understand you want to create ASP.NET web application, but do you have a kind of any option that you want to go with? Like, I can make it as an empty web, or I can add a web form, or I can add a MVC. I can start with MVC and notice these two checkboxes here. Let's say I'm starting with MVC. Notice these two checkboxes. Now I can go in and then say like, hey, I want to start with MVC, but I want you to provide me the, all the DLLs, all the folder structure for web forms also. I want you to provide me all the, placeholders for web API also, right? So pretty much, now, for example, when I start with MVC web forms, you notice that, the web forms checkbox is grayed out because that is the starting point. But I can go in and then select MVC, or I can select web API, right? So now it's something like, I can have a web forms with a web API. I can have an MVC with a web form. So you pretty much, you can do whatever you like. So this is typically what we know as one ASP.NET. Not only that, you can actually go ahead and then create web forms for now and then come back and then say, hey, you know what, I want to add MVC. So in future you can add MVC, in future you can add web API. So you're not locked down. So I like to call this as, flavors. Basically, I start with a flavor of web forms, then I can come in and then add a flavor of MVC. I can add in a flavor of web API. So it's pretty interesting. And not only that, now they have this concept of authentication. Earlier, the way you used to do authentication or whatever you used to have was just a forms auth, which was by default the web forms would have it, and then the MVC templates that you have would give you the login based forms authentication, all those things. Now I can just come in here and then say, hey, you know what, I don't want any authentication in my app, or I can say, no, this is an individual user account, meaning I will have a user name and passwords form, and then I can go with all the social logins, all those kind of things. And then organizational accounts, meaning what you can do is basically you can go to single sign-on, like you can use the Active Directory on the cloud. So there's Azure supports Active Directory, so you can use that, or you can have your own single sign-on and then come in and then set up. Or I can, of course, one of the valid scenario is Windows authentication, right? So I'm going to say individual user accounts, and then I will say OK. And not only that, now what we can do is, if you see here, I have a checkbox here which says host in cloud. So this is in the right hand corner now. So, and it says, what do you want to do? Do you want to create a website, or do you want to create a virtual machine on the cloud? So this is basically Microsoft Azure. As you can see here, it already knows that I have a subscription of Azure, so it has picked up that. and basically it knows that what's my subscription is all about. So pretty much that's what it is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say MVC. Since we are doing the MVC thing, then I'll just leave it as is. I won't do anything. If you want unit test, you can add a unit test and then it will create the unit test project. I'll say okay, and oh, I think I selected the Azure. Let me just okay, now I don't want to host it in Azure. Okay, now here's the thing. So this is something that I blogged about a couple of months back. This is something new that they have introduced. When I first time created a project, you see now there is a project README. I kind of like it. So this says this application consists of sample pages showing about basic nav, about home, about contact. Theming is using Bootstrap. Authentication, if selected, shows how to register and sign in. ASP.NET features managed using NuGet. I kind of love it. It's just like, I just created, so it says, hey, this is how your app is all about. And then also note that, they say customize app, change customization options are all provided here, and then how do you want to deploy it and then get some more help. So it's an HTML file which is there in your Solution Explorer. If you see here, I have highlighted the file, so this project _ readme, I kind of like it. So pretty much, I keep it open as is, let me close it for now. And then it's pretty similar, right? There's nothing changed. You have the same app start, you have the controllers, you have the models, you have the views. So, but what is OneASP.NET? It's all about, it's all about basically the option that I showed you in the starting. You have the selection about web forms, all that. So if you remember, I just added web MVC as the flavor, right? Now I can come in here and then say, hey, you know what? I want to add a new controller. And now you can see, like, I get web API controller class, right? If you see here. So I can just come in here and then just add it. So I will say value. So under by default it has this value controller. So I will say, okay, go ahead and create me a web API called values controller. So now what it does is it just creates a values controller, which is an API controller. So I am now able to add web API without any fuss. I just have to say right click, file, new, web API controller. Right, so so that's the greatness about the OneASP.NET. So you can pretty much come in and then add any flavor of .NET, ASP.NET in the future. So that's brief about OneASP.NET. So if somebody asks you, so OneASP.NET is all about the new project experience. That is, you just say ASP.NET web app, and then you will say. You will select web forms or MVC, and then you can come in and then add, all the other stuff. So that's predominantly what ASP.NET is all about. And then, of course, you can come in later and then add any flavor that you want. I can come in and then say now, like, let's say I want to add a new web form, right? See here, it's right there in the, our context menu. I can just say add a new web form. I'll say web form 1.aspx. Boom, this is a web form, right? And I can run it now. Of course, since it's MVC, so the MVC routing goes first, and then it will, okay, now the way the Visual Studio works is if you are in a very particular screen and then you press F5, it will take that screen and then show you, go to that particular form. So I can do this now, I can say home /index. Remember, by default, all ASP.NET MVC have this home controller and then index action. There you go. Since we started out with MVC, so that's what it does. But I added a web form, so I can go in and say web form 1.aspx. There you go. So this is OneASP.NET. Everything working in thing. And remember, we added a web API, so I can come in and say, I think it was known as values. Let me check what it was. Values controller. Yeah, this is API. Okay, this is again the routing problem. Like, you have to be careful when you're mixing everything. So I think web API routing is not done. So where is my routes? We'll come back to that. Yeah, so the web API routing is not enabled. So we'll come back to that I'll show you how to do that. So that's about one ASP.NET. Let me go to, yeah, the routing problem is, I just have to add a web API routing config. So let me come back to that. I'll show you how it is done. Now next, let me go to my, okay, Bootstrap. So I just want to talk about briefly what a Bootstrap is all about. So if you are very new to this terminology called Bootstrap, so what you can do is you can go to getbootstrap.com. So typically, basically a Bootstrap is nothing but a layouting system. It's a CSS based, and what it does is it provides you the virtual 12-column grid. And it also is responsive in nature, meaning using Bootstrap what you can do is you can actually define when I am in a large screen I want all the 12 columns to be seen. When I am in a mid screen, like tablets, I want only 2 columns to be seen. But when I'm in a mobile screen, I want only 1 column to be visible. So you can actually define all these things using their classes. You do not write anything except you use their classes. You use the CSS file and then you use their classes. So if you can see here, so that is Twitter Bootstrap. It's a CSS file, and you can pretty much, if you see here, it says like, what these are the things that you can do, the grid system, the grid options. This is how you can do. It's a virtual 12 grid column, and then you can say like, I want to use 8 or 4, and now you can say, no, I want to use 4, 4, 4, or I want to use 6 or a 6, and then you tell where you should see all this. Like, MD means medium screen. LG means large, SM means small screen, meaning mobile, tablet, and then the desktop screen. So this is Bootstrap. So now what you saw when I did home/index is actually Bootstrap. So now, okay, there's a jet going in next to me. Sorry about that. So there's a jet flying next to my home. Maybe Air Force is doing something. So now what has happened is, if you look at the content folder, you will now start seeing like, there is something called as bootstrap.css. So that's the CSS file that they use now by default. So Microsoft went ahead and then embraced Bootstrap because the community kind of said, hey, we want to use Bootstrap as default. We don't want to try anything else. So Microsoft said, okay, we're going to go with community, and then now they ship by default, they ship Bootstrap in your project. So whether it is a web forms or whether it is a MVC, now the whole layouting system of your application is Bootstrap. So what is Bootstrap speciality of the Bootstrap? So now what I'm going to do is, let me close out this. I'm using Firefox because on this laptop I have problem with my IE. It's the DPI problem with my IE. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use responsive design of Firefox. So let's assume I am on a very big monitor, like 1920 by 900, or no, this is too much. So I'll say 1280 by 600. So if you can see here, for 1280 by 600, what has happened is the nav bar, I have the application name, home, about, contact, register, login, and then I have a jumbotron coming up here. So according to Twitter's terminologies, this whole block that you see here is known as jumbotron. And then I have 3 columns: getting started, getting more libraries, web hosting, correct? So that's what I have. And then now let's say I don't change any code. Since I've used the Bootstrap, Twitter Bootstrap, see what happens when I go and then say, assume I am on a device whose width is 768, right? Okay, so it still holds on. So let's assume I am on a device whose width is 360. Notice what happened. Actually, let's come back to 768. Notice what happened. We had 3 columns below this jumbotron, but they have become rows, correct? So that's what the magic of Bootstrap is all about. It is responsive. And then if I go and then say 360, now see what happens. The menu is gone. So where did it go? So it is still there. If you see here, this is known as a menu thingy. So you click on that, I will be able to see my menu again. So I click on about, so it goes to about page. I click on contact, it goes to contact page. But now my screen is responsive to different screen widths, right? I can go back to even more smaller. So as you can see here, it is still doing it. But when somebody views this on a 1280 by 600, well, everything is back, right? So Twitter Bootstrap, what it is doing is, of course, it's a media queries, but I do not have to do anything except, let me show you. Let's say I want to create a danger button here, like, getting started. I want to use a danger button. So let me show you the code, what we should be using. So let me open up the views, then home, and then I'll go to index, and in the Jumbotron, you see that, there is a primary button. So now what I will do is I will use this guy. Okay, let me just increase a little bit of font if you guys are not able to see that. It should be better now. Yeah, there you go. So now I'm going to just go ahead and then paste this. I'm going to keep everything as is. But what I will do is, so Twitter Bootstrap has this nice classes, like, you just have to say BTN, and then you say what kind of button you need. So BTN is the default class that has to be applied, and then I can say, hey, I want a danger, right? So I don't know why I picked danger, but I just want to prove the point that, that is all you need to do. So now if I come back here and then do a refresh, there you go. You see this, the button. It's so nicely coming up with whatever color that you need. I mean, normally the danger is a red color, so the red color is coming up with the same thing. So similarly, the Bootstrap has a lot of CSS classes out of the box. We just have to use it. We don't have to kind of scratch our head as to, okay, how do I do that or how do I do this? Everything has been covered in the Bootstrap, and then you can pretty much start using it. So with MVC 5, all your projects are Bootstrap based now. And here's an interesting thing now. There is a project, or there's a website called Bootswatch. So what these guys have done is they have gone ahead and then created close to 10 themes out of the box which are free. So I can use Emilia. So I mean that's some theme name, like as you can see here, Emilia. So this Emilia theme is like navbar is a red color. And then you have all these buttons coming up. The typography is different like that. And then pretty much I like this guy, Superhero, because kind of the name, the Superhero, the name itself is cool. So what I have done is I already downloaded Superhero. Let me show you that. So I kind of already downloaded this Bootstrap -theme.css. So that's the the Superhero theme. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, and remember how our default website is looking. It's looking like a blackish and then whitish, right? So now I'm going to go to my Visual Studio. I'm going to stop what do you call the debugging. I'm going to just rename this guy and say this is the default, just to make sure, like, we know what we are doing. So I just copy paste my theme, and then I'm going to just rename this guy to Bootstrap theme.cs. I'm doing only this because there is a bundle config where we have already bundled bootstrap.css. I just don't want to recompile, but I would have to actually. So let me clean it, and I'm going to just run it now. And what we should see is, remember, the old screen is still here, so it's lost now because it's got, oh, what happened? Hang on. So what should have happened is we should have seen our blue color. So let me just quickly debug. The demo guards are not with me today. So this is Bootswatch version v3. That's correct. So let me go and then look at my bundle config. Bundle config, we are saying bootstrap.css. Yes, that's all correct. So let me clean my project and then rebuild it, and Bootstrap, then this is Bootstrap v3. Yeah, that's fine. So everything is fine. The config is also fine. So let me again give it a try. We should see pretty much the same, with just replacing that bootstrap.css, we will see everything. Oh, I know why this is happening. What has happened is in the bundle.config there is a new or it's always, no, it's not a browser cache or anything, but rather this is the thing. So I have enabled the optimization. So with enable optimization, what .NET or Visual Studio does is, you can see that I have bootstrap.css and then bootstrap.min.css. whenever you're debugging, you need the full source code. So you will use bootstrap.css, but it knows that if I turn on my in the bundle config enable optimization true, he will always bundle bootstrap.min.css. It is automatically it's inbuilt in the compilation that, hey, the config may say bootstrap.css, but since the enable optimization is true, I want you to use min.css if it is there. So you saw that I have min.css here. So min.css is the default CSS, what comes, the black and white. So that's why it is always going and then picking up that guy. Now just for the demo purpose, this is not advisable. You should have optimization true. Just for the demo purpose, I'm going to just say enable optimization false. Now what should happen is we should see our superhero theme coming up on our project. I had practiced 5 times, but I missed commenting that out. So there you go. So all I had done was I just switched the bootstrap.css. That's it, and then you can pretty much completely change your application. And I like this theme. It's pretty cool. I can go to about, I can see the contact, I like the typography, that's it, and you're done. You maybe, if your team likes this, you can start using this. Like, you see that same BTN default, everything is there. I didn't have to do anything, right? It's all about the bootstrap.css. You go with that, you're cool. And then bootswatch, if you go back and then look at, bootswatch, they have close to 10, there's something called AT. So AT is another theme that they have. And there is something called a space lab. You can play around with it. You can write a simple script wherein, you provide all these things in your pages, and then you can pretty much click on it, and then, it automatically changes your bootstrap. You maintain, what that user was having, you save their profile, and then something like that. So that's Bootstrap for you, and that's by default in ASP.NET projects now. So the Bootstrap is very popular, and pretty much most of the people use this. So Microsoft said, okay, we're going to go with whatever community wants, and then we will by default ship it. So basically Bootstrap can be added as a NuGet package. If you are thinking, oh, can I use it in my project now? Yes, you can. But you got to make sure that you know how to use those classes, because if you look at my index.css, there is a very specific classes being used, class Jumbotron, and then div class row, class call MD4, and then of course call MD4, button default. So you can use your Bootstrap, like you can get Bootstrap into your project by just going into manage NuGet packages. Okay, it's running. Let me stop it. And you can right click and say manage NuGet packages, and you can pretty much go in and say Bootstrap. Yeah, enabling optimization true, it will work. Only thing you need to do is every theme will have a bootstrap.min.css, and it's a best practice to always get a min.css rather than the complete bootstrap.css, because min is a minified version. So for the demo purpose, I'm just showing you bootstrap.css. But when you turn on enable optimization, you should make sure that you're packaging the min.css along with your project. What happened to my internet? So let's check. Let me go back and then say, okay, online, what is happening? I have my network connection, but why is it not Bootstrap? Yeah, let's see now if I'm success. But basically you get the point. So it's a package, you can just get in the package, it's added. So by default, when you create a file new project in Visual Studio 13, it's already added. The package is already added to you. Let me check if it is there. Yeah, there you go. So this is what I was talking about. So the Bootstrap is a package that the CSS file is now, the Twitter Bootstrap is now made available to all the projects as a a NuGet package. So by default, when you go to Visual Studio 2013 and say file new project ASP.NET application, they already bundle the package for you. You don't have to install it. But I'm saying, like, if there are anybody not using Visual Studio 2013 and then they want their projects to have Bootstrap, yes, you can always go go to NuGet package, get the Bootstrap NuGet package, and then just include it. And then of course you would have to use the same classes, whatever you need. So that's pretty much about Bootstrap. I just wanted to give you the feel about what Bootstrap can do. As you can see, I can just wrap different Bootstrap themes by just replacing the file, and then that's it. My project takes this look and feel of that. So that's the demo we saw. Now my interesting thing, scaffolding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same thing. Yeah, let me use the same thing, and I will switch back the content, whatever I had. So I'm going to delete this, or I'm going to just rename this guy, and I will say this is theme, and I'll get back my default, the black and white. And let me just clean solution for a while. Okay, now coming to the scaffolding. So what is scaffolding, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a model. I'm going to model myself like a person. So I'm going to say add a class, and I'm going to call it as person. Of course, a person will have an ID. So I'm going to say he has an ID. A person will have string first name. Person will have string last name. And for this demo, I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to say like integer or string designation, and I'm going to just say string location. Just a simple stuff. So now what I've done is I've created a model called person, right? Now let's say you have to create now the full CRUD screen for this person. Okay, I want a database, I want an entity framework ORM, and I want the create screen, read screen, update screen, delete screen, right? Just sit back and then estimate how much will you estimate, how much time will it take for you to do all this stuff, right? Now with entity framework, what I can do is I can come back here and then say add, and then notice that there's a new menu item here, the context menu item called scaffolded item, new scaffolded item, right? As the word goes, scaffolding is all about you go and lay out things for you, and then so that's what it does. So I'm going to say new scaffolded item, and I will say MVC, and I will say MVC controller with views using entity framework. So that's the key part here. I don't want to write everything myself. So what I will do is I will say MVC5 controller with views using entity framework, right? So this is the new, actually this whole dialog is new in ASP.NET MVC5. No, it was there in MVC4 also, but this is the new things from the MVC4, but now it's been updated for MVC5 also. Now you see that it says MVC5 controller with views using entity framework. So it's going to create a controller for me automatically. I don't write a code. It's going to create me 4 views automatically without writing any code. It is going to create an entity framework context for me, and I don't write the code. So I'm going to show you that. So I'm clicking on add button. So it says, hey, that's fine. What's the model that you want to use? I said, I want to use person model, and I don't have an entity framework now, right? See that there's a plus mark here. It says new data context. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to say, I want person data context. For those of you, do not clear out anything before this. Let me come back again. When I say plus, notice that it is highlighting a particular portion here. So you just have to replace this highlighted portion. One ASP NET demo. So it's using the namespace. So you just have to replace that with whatever you need. So I will say person data context, right? And so it will be available. So this is basically the namespace, the fully qualified namespace. One ASP NET demo .models.person data context. So I said add, and I will say I want you to use async controller, because I'm kind of expecting it's going to have a more heavy traffic. So I want you to use async controller, generate the views, reference the script libraries, use a layout page. If there is already a view start, leave empty, and then what should be the controller name? Notice how intelligent this is. Person means only one, but maybe the controller will handle more than one. So it says people controller. I didn't write that. So it's all the tooling that is built, or it's all the Microsoft intelligence that has been added by Microsoft to this particular window. So I'm going to say add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 seconds. right? And everything is done. So let me show you what it has done. So if you're assuming, if you're thinking like, hey, what is it talking about? Where are the code? So let me show you that. Remember, I just created person.cs. Now you can see at the background, it's showing you the thing. Now first it has gone ahead and then created a person.data context, right? Let me double click on this. There you go. So it has created person data context. It is inheriting from DB context. So this is code first of entity framework, and then it has used base. So it's using a connection string called person data context. So I'll show you. It's updated my web.config also, and then it has added a new data. See the DB set. It's basically the the table. So it says okay, there is people, right? So it has created the data context for me, and it has created the person people controller for me. It's inheriting from controller. Look at this, all the code has been written. I just have to run it now, but I'm just explaining you things how it has been done. So there is index method. It says await. So now you can do, entity framework 6 supports async async await pattern for all the reading. So it says to list async, so I can await on this. So meaning a one thread will come in, issue the take the request, and then hand off to a controller, and another thread will actually finish the response and then come back. The original thread goes back and then can actually serve another request. So that's why it's pretty good that you use an async based controller. But it shouldn't be like every time you use async. It has to be only when you think it's gonna be your traffic is gonna be so huge that you need threads available to serve each second or each minute. You need threads to serving your request only then. So now what it has done is it has written all the code that I should be writing, like index, it's getting me all the list of the people, details, it gives me a particular person, it takes an ID and then gives me that. Create, you can see here it is creating the person. Edit, it's doing all the editing things. And then let's go and then look at the views folder. So if you see the views folder, there is a people folder now. Okay, the convention is people controller should have a views folder called people. So it has created people. Now let's look at the index. There you go. It has done everything for me. It is doing this is the index. So this is the table for each item in model. So what is the model? Model is an I enumerable of person. It's a list. And it's doing all the other things for me, like editing, details, delete, create, everything. So let me just clean solution and then I'll just build it. It's going to people.create, which is not what I want, so I'll say people. So it should take me to the index, and we should see that index is empty because there is nothing in the database as of now, right? So we are closing down to last 15 minutes, so let me just hurry. Yeah, as I said, look at this. So the index page comes up, but there's nothing because there is nothing in the database. So okay, I'll go on and say create new. You will see that the URL now changes to people/create. So first name I'm going to put is myself, and then I will say I'm an evangelist, but I'm in Bangalore, and I will say create. Boom. If you think I'm bluffing, I've done something, let me refresh it. You see I'm refreshing 5 times now, and it's get added up. So let me go and create one more data now. So I'm going to say Abhishek Kant. He's the country manager and he is from Gurgaon. And I will say create. There you go. I created 2 new records and I can go and then edit. So I will say G Nagaraj maybe, and I'll say save. Done. I'll go and then look at the details. Fine. I'll go into the edit. So yes, I went there. I'll save it. I'll come back to the list. Right. So basically, I didn't write any code at all. So everything has been done through the scaffolding. So that's why I said the scaffolding is pretty interesting. I kind of like the fact. So somebody was asking a question that can I rename these pages like create, delete, details, edit, index? Well, if you're asking me this question, you got to understand that how does MVC work? MVC works based on this controller action methods. That is, if you have a controller action method called index, you need to have a view called index.cshtml or index.aspx. You want to rename your index, you need to rename your action methods. That's it. By default, it's a convention that pretty much everybody uses this. That is, I know for sure that this is a create screen, this is a update screen, or this is a thing. But it's up to you. But if you want to change it, you need to change this particular what do you call action method first, and then go back and then rename your the view. There is a possibility. What you can do is, if you are very specific in the way you want to create your the action method names and then the controller, the view names, you can actually write your own custom scaffolder. And then in the custom scaffolder, what you can do is you can do whatever you want. The scaffolding is all a T4 template. Maybe some point of time I'll do a webinar on that, like custom scaffolding. But yeah, that's what it is. So I hope you got the idea of scaffolding. As I said, I did not write anything. I mean, there's a question, how do you update records based on ID? It's pretty simple. It's basically you go find the record first by ID. If you see here, I go first, go and then get the record by ID, and then I just update that. So that's it. So if you see here, find db.people.find by ID, and then I edit that, and then I'll just go and then modify that. And then say await db.save changes. Basically, if you do whatever I did, you will be able to get the code. Okay. So let me move forward because we are losing out on time. I'm in my excitement. I've been taking too much of time. Okay, there's a good question. Where are these details stored? Okay, let me show you what happened. So in the web.config, what it did was it went ahead and then created a new config connection string. And those of you who know, with Visual Studio 2012, you do not need SQL Express installed in your system. Rather, there is something called as local DB, and it will be always be there. If you install Visual Studio 2012, you get this concept of local DB. So all you need to say is local DB/v11.0, and then that's it. And then it has created a database by name person data context, 2014 5th to 22. 3 o'clock 45 minutes 57 seconds. So that's what this naming convention is. So, but if you want, you can change it. You can just change it to whatever you need. And where is the database stored? This database is always stored in this app data folder. If you see here, there's one database created for identity. This is the identity, and then this is the person data context. So if I can just go in and then double click, I'll be able to open that. Yeah, there are two connection strings because one connection string is used by the identity. But I mean, basically, by default, every web.config will come with a default connection. So that's how the project template is done. But when I went ahead and said, okay, I want you to create a new entity framework, so it has gone ahead and created a connection string by the same name as that of the context. So there's a question, should we create every time new context? No, you don't have to. I can just come back here, add another controller and say, but use the same, let me show you that. So I will say add new scaffolded item, MVC5 controller with views and then entity framework. I will say this is a person model. As you can see, it has already taken person data context. And you can see it says people1 controller. Right, so I can pretty much do whatever. So it is intelligent enough to know that, oh, there is already a controller. Actually, it already showed me two contexts, so I could have used the same and then worked with it. So, but yeah, I'm just trying to sell you. So question is, how will the connection string when hosting? So it's pretty similar to what you provide. Instead of local db/v1.0, you will say data source is equal to your server name / the express name, whatever it is, right? So those are the same thing. So it doesn't change. You cannot store a database to FTP. So sorry. So it's a connection string. It's a database connection string. So that's what an entity framework uses. Let me move on. I spent much time on this. There's a lot many things to cover. So demo is done. One identity. So now, actually, let me open up the same. I shouldn't have closed it. So let me open up one ASP NET demo, and I will pretty much take you through the one ASP.NET identity. So what has previously, before using, this identity, what we used to use was something called as membership provider, SQL membership provider, and then the universal providers. But the problem with them was, they were all constricted to SQL data source, so you couldn't move out of the SQL data source. So what Microsoft has done now is, and then moreover, the user profile that the memberships used to manage, like SQL membership or the universal membership, you couldn't provide additional or a custom columns or custom fields onto that one. The customization was not possible. It would always be the same table, and then you, in order to maintain additional fields, you had to create new table and then hold it there and then link it to the user ID and all those stuff. Now what Microsoft has done is it has gone ahead and then created something called as, okay, not the code controller, but if you go to the models, you'll see there is something called as identity models now. So let me close this guy. So it's something known as identity model, and notice that I have this application user. It is inheriting from identity user. So identity user is coming from entity framework SDK. So basically, it's already shipped Microsoft.asp.identity. So that's the the assembly, and that has this identity user, and I can subclass it and then create my own user. So application user is inheriting from identity user, and then I can come in here and then add new properties like color or whatever you want, you can add it. And then we have something called as application DB context. It is now inheriting from our Microsoft.asp.identity assembly now provides us something known as identity DB context, and then we just have to tell, hey, the type that you have to work is this application user or I user or anything that you want to create. And notice that this is a entity framework data first data context, right? That's all. So because of that, now I can just connect this to any database, any data store. It need not be SQL Server. It can be Oracle. It can be Azure, anything. So basically, if you see here, application DB context, it's all, when you create file new project in ASP.NET MVC file, you get ASP.NET 1 identity by default now. It's no more membership. It's all identity, and it's all based on the entity framework. As you can see here, it's using the default connection for maintaining the data context. So if I open it up, so if you see here, there we have. So let's see if we can connect to this. So yeah, so I'm able to open this. So there is the ASP.NET roles, ASP.NET user claims. So everything is claims based now, and then there is ASP.NET user. So I believe I already have a user. Let me check that. Show table data. No, in this example I have not saved anything. So let me run it. I think we are already at 4 p.m. I still have 2 things to cover. So let me quickly do it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and then say register myself, and I'll say, okay, email is my personal email, and then passwords, some default password. And now what it will do is it will use this entity framework context that I showed you here, this application DB context, and then it will go ahead and create the data here. There you go. I am logged in. Now let me come back here and then refresh this, and you will see, like, we have a row now. Here is my row. What happened? Why is it not showing? Yeah, there you go. So all the password hash, everything has been done. So everything was done using just this application user here. Yeah, it's a hashed out. That's a good practice. You should always hash it and then just keep the hashed string, and then kind of decode it at the time of authenticating. So everything is done now. If I show you how it is being used, if I go to the account controller, let's say we want to log in, right? So if you see here, it goes to login, and then it checks, and then it says user manager, and then find a sync. So user manager is nothing but, again, it's all application user manager. It is using this particular class called application user manager, and then this guy is pretty much knows how to go ahead and then get the users from the store. So the store may be anything, right? It can be a SQL server or anything, but he knows how to go and then get it. So you pretty much use that and log in, and then same, you do find async, and then you sign in async, saying like this is the user, and then you kind of come back, register. You can use username and email by default. That's what the two properties that come up, and then you just do create async. You're creating a user with the username and password. If you want more, what you can do is you can add it to the application user, like more number of columns. You should add it to the application user, and then that's it. It will go ahead and create those many columns in the table, because now it's all entity framework code first. So you can use migrations. If you've done entity framework, you will know that there is something called as migrations. So that's what it is. So as you saw, there is a table that it automatically creates. I don't have to do it, because entity framework is all about it goes ahead and then it knows what are the properties that I have set, and then it automatically creates the table. And then the users table has email, password, all those things. And of course, I have the claims, roles, logins, all those things. So pretty much login, provider, and user ID. So this is basically when you want to map your social login with your email, user ID and password things. So that's what that is. So that was one identity. And then attribute routing. So let me quickly bring up attribute routing. This is one of the coolest things that came out as part of ASP NET MVC 5. So view start page, attribute route demo. Yeah, so basically with attribute routing, what happens is, normally what you do is you will come back here to your route config, and okay, let me do this. So this is the one of the new feature, and then the feature is known as attribute routing, and you need to turn on that attribute routing by saying routes.map MVC attribute routes. This is the traditional routing where you give it a pattern saying like, hey, if you ever get a URL like this, which is like a 3-part series, your controller, action, and ID, map them to the controller if there is anything. So basically here user might have said home, and user might have said index or view or get or whatever, and then he might have passed an ID. So it will map to this default thing if it doesn't find anything. Otherwise it will go and then look for that particular controller. So this is the default way of doing things. So now with the default way of doing routing, the problem, or one of the concerns was, okay, if somebody is viewing this controller, how do they know what is the route it maps to? What is the route index map to? Of course, one of the thumb rule is it is always the controller prefix home and then index, right? Well, if you have a complex routes, how do you know what it is mapping to, right? So what Microsoft did was with MVC5, they said, okay, we will allow you to attribute your routes with a route name, or with a route pattern itself. So what I can do is, for a simple to start out with, let's say I want to route it like this. If somebody goes and said /books, or if somebody goes ahead and said /books, and then they may pass an ISBN number of the book, right? So notice this. Okay, let me increase my font. Notice what I have. I have a placeholder called ISBN, and then I put a question mark. So that means this is optional. So let me go ahead and run this. So now I can go to a route called books. And can you see this? It says returning all books from catalog. So that is because, notice what happened. Let me put a breakpoint here, and I'll say books. Notice ISBN is null because I didn't pass anything. So it says if if it is null, say returning all books from catalog. If it is not null, then say this. So let me F5. So now if I come back here and then say, okay, give me a book with a ISBN like this, and then press an enter. So now see what happens. ISBN gets mapped, the model binded by the MVC, and then I can now go ahead and if I do an F5, it says here is your book with ISBN number so and so, right? So this is what you can do. Now you can define your routes as an attribute on top of each action. right? No need to just go by the traditional attribute whatever was there. Just give me a second. So similarly, I can go ahead and say, you know what, I want to view. Oh, you're not able to see the screen? No, I think I am sharing, so you should be able to see now. So basically now what happens is, let's say I want to view all books by a language. If somebody doesn't provide me a language, I want to default it to English. For example, for now I have said EN. So that's what gets mapped into that. So now what I can do is I can go and say books / by languages. So it says returning all English language books. That is because I set in the route attribute that, hey, if anybody says books lang and then lang is empty, set it to EN, that is English, whatever. And then now I can come back here and then say Kannada. And there you go, returning all Kannada language books. So what it does is, it kind of puts all the different possibilities. That is, I can say /books /lang or /books /lang /en, whatever. So now the point is, I can provide my routes on top of my action, and then if somebody is viewing this code, they're like, oh, okay, this action is mapped to this particular route. There's another thing. What you can do, if you see here, every time I'm repeating this prefix called books, right? Books / books /. So we don't have to do that. Rather, there is another feature known as route prefix, meaning, hey, this controller's prefix is reviews, right? And then I can just leave it and just say route. And now this is /reviews /index or /reviews. And then I can say, bracket review ID. And then I can say review ID /edit. So let me show that. So I can come back here and then say reviews. It says returning all reviews. And I can say review /5, and it will say returning review with ID 5, and I can say edit. It says editing review with ID 5. So this is basically like a simple way of not doing the repeatability. Rather, just put a route prefix and say reviews and say index review ID /edit. Okay. So this is attribute routing. I know. It's very fast paced that I'm doing, but I know we are already 12 minutes overboard, so there's one more demo. Let me quickly do that. But this is one of the interesting things that I saw in ASP NET MVC 5. It's pretty good. Attribute routing I've used in a couple of places, and then it's pretty good. So there is another thing. Previously in ASP.NET, there's no way I could authenticate a particular action method. So I always had to use global.asax and then listen to the application level event called authenticate and request _ authenticate. Listen to that particular event and do some authentication there. I could always do authorization here, meaning, hey, is he an authorized guy? Because authentication and authorization are two different things. Now what I can do is I can write my own custom authentication. So if I show you this auth, so this is basically what it's doing is, there is a new interface now called authentication filter. It says on authentication challenge. Right, so basically it will be challenged, and then you can authenticate. In the authentication, normally what we do is we'll create a principal, use the whatever context that we have, build up the new principal like custom principal, keep certain things on that for every request, and then that's what will be flowed around through the complete MVC controller pipeline. So now what you can do is you can write your own custom attribute by using authentication filter, and then I can apply it on top of index method. So now before somebody can use an index method, he has to be authenticated, and I can do my custom authentication using the on authentication feature. I know it's very fast paced, so maybe one fine day we'll do custom authentication in ASP.NET MVC 5, but I just wanted to highlight that this is available. You can write your own stuff. You want to do OAuth based authentication on each request, action method being called, all those things. So now if you see, I have put a custom auth on index. If somebody goes to abort, this will fail. So you need to be first authenticated to use abort. So it's like I can now shield off different ways, different sections by using the authentication and authorization feature. Authentication says, is he a valid user? Authorization says, is he a valid user, but does he have the role to perform this action? So that's the difference between auth and authorize. Okay, so that's pretty much it what we had for today. Attribute routing, we saw the demo. Authentication filters, we saw the demo. I mean, of course, it was very fast, but we'll come back and then maybe do it one more time. So that's pretty much what I had to kind of show.